Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out in car with boxer promoter Ben Shalom. We've just come from the weigh-in for a Friday night show.
We're going to get comfortable once.
That's no problem. Fraser Clark in the main event against Marius Vac, and on the way to a high-level meeting, I think we could say, we can't say what it's about, but with Kalle Sauerland in Aldwych. We're on the way there, stuck in traffic, so it gives us a great opportunity to get to know Ben a little better. We've been talking about doing a sit-down for quite some time. But let's start off with a positive, not that most of it won't be. Bournemouth show recently, delighted to be there in fight week, and from what I hear, my sources tell me the numbers were really, really good. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, to be honest, Bournemouth was a project that we took on. Shane McGuigan said, was almost saying, you've got to come here for a long time. For Chris Smith, I think it was his dream to fight in Bournemouth. So to fight once, to fight twice, to end up in the stadium, to fight for a world title, to win a world title, it was almost too good to be true. I couldn't quite believe how the momentum picked up in a town like that. We sold 3,000 or 4,000 tickets, I think, the first time, and then ended up the next event selling another 3 or 4, and then to jump to 15,000, have that sort of level of interest, the whole town got involved. And I think it just shows, sometimes it feels like boxing gets stale and we have to use the same venues and the same places and the same cities, and everyone's doing the same thing. And so when we can go and do different things, whether it's Paris, Bournemouth, there's another event coming up in August, which is a completely new place, and it just adds something different. And I think we felt that, and the viewing figures was like the 4th best boxing event that they've had in 18 months. I think nearly a million sort of unique viewers, 400,000 at one time watching the Chris Smith fight. So it was a special event all round. But I think when you get two domestic guys fighting for a world title, that's what British boxing fans want to see.
Is there maybe a slight disappointment, though, that the 400,000 watching at the peak had to sit through what was pretty turgid action, as it turned out? Because it's great to get the viewers in, it shows your marketing's working, but you want them to be rewarded, don't you, with something a bit more exciting?
To be honest, I know what you're saying, but I think because it was that scrappy, and it was close, and it was dramatic, in a weird way, it was enthralling. It wasn't the nicest in terms of, to a boxing purist eye, and I think Lawrence has had that problem not just in that fight, but for the past 3 fights now, and he'll be wanting to sit down and work that out. But the way Chris Smith, I think, overcame what was a very, very difficult task in front of an arena like that, that's what was special. That was what was emotional about the night, and the spectacle itself in the stadium is what boxing is all about. So yeah, not the most technical fight, but I think it was an entertaining fight.
Well, softball out the way, let's get to know you a little bit better. First of all, just tell us a little bit about your background, upbringing and so on, and just from there, how you got to where you are.
Yeah, so look, when I was growing up, to be honest, football was my sport. That's what I played to a fairly high level. I played for Altrincham, who some people know, in South Manchester. And then basically started business around 17, 18, started in the music industry, doing gigs, doing smaller festivals. And as I was growing up, had a friends that were professional boxers, and so would go to see shows.
Who were they?
Sam Hyde, Ryan Oliver, people, Mikey Gomez Jr., right at the starts of their career. So it might not seem that long ago, but that's how old I am. So I grew up, and those fighters, some are still fighting, obviously some are finished now. But that was my introduction growing up, was going to small hall shows in and around.
Lots of brothers, sisters, siblings and parents. I've met your dad, of course, at one of the fight weeks. Yeah, he seems very supportive. Was that always the case, in your boxing dreams?
Look, I think my parents weren't business people. So this was like, even when I decided to go in this route, not get a job, forget about any sort of security or safety and just try it myself, I think that was just an entrepreneurial thing I had from my granddad, who was from Belfast, had his own wine shop, and that was sort of what inspired me to, it might have been small, but because it was his own, because it was what he wanted to do and it was on his terms, and he was an absolute grafter and went through a lot. And I think that was what made me realise maybe I don't have to go and get a job, maybe I can do something that I really am passionate about and enjoy. And since I was 22, 23, it was boxing. As I say, never had a job, and my parents, I think when you say to your parents you're going to go into boxing, they probably, they want you to, they were supportive in the sense they want me to be happy, but it's hardly the the most conventional route to go into, but they knew I was passionate about it. They knew I saw an opportunity within it, and I felt like I could help the sport. I've always run different businesses and been obsessed with solving major problems and things that I'm passionate about, and that went through my teens. But when I was old enough, when I got to 22, 23, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go full feet first into this and get my licenses and find a way into the sport. I've been helping out at local promoters, as I said, for a while, and I just saw so much with the sport that I loved but also despised. And I think because I was young and because I still have no real sort of responsibilities and things like that, I could take a huge risk and take huge risks, and I was able to, for the past few years, just absolutely graft every single day and learn the sport in the hardest way possible, which is at the grassroots, which is those small horse shows where budgets are tight, where you've not really got anything and you've got to make ends meet. And it was an amazing education, and I think probably parents looking back at that time were a little bit apprehensive about what I was doing. But I think now they know how hard I work and how passionate about it, so they support me now.
And you mentioned small hall shows there and making ends meet. I remember when you first burst onto the scene, and there was a bit of a yeah, just like him, yeah. And there was a bit of a conversation around the media that you were a bit of a hustler. I think it's fair to say you wanted, boxers, well-known boxers with high profiles, to appear at your shows. You wanted a bit of advertising, a bit of marketing. Not so keen on paying for it, it has to be said at the time, and I think that's because you were working on such a shoestring budget. How did you feel about that kind of immersion into the boxing industry and how it was different from you'd worked in music before?
Well, no, so I started actually helping out on local promoters in Manchester. At shows there, and that was before I ever put on my own show. So whether that was helping with the press conferences, the getting people to shows, travel, foreign officials, just crazy stuff, counting cash, wristbands, and even just booking venues and things like that. And so before I decided to do my own show, that was how I started. But yeah, I had to hustle because I had nothing. So I remember borrowing money to get my promoter's bond, but initially they wouldn't give me my license, so I had to borrow. Carl Greaves, who's a very good friend of mine, has always helped me along the way, and he was the license holder. If you look on even the first tournament shows we did, and yeah, I had to call on favors. We didn't have anything in terms of to give anyone, but we had a lot of energy and a lot of passion. And luckily, by growing up and around Manchester and being at shows, I knew I've been introduced to Ricky Hatton and I've been introduced to Anthony Crolla and Paulie Malignaggi. People won't realise, but I met him literally by chance as I just started, and he was a constant support. And so people like that would help me promote the shows and help me come to press conferences and put their support behind it. And we didn't have money to sign fighters, so we started with tournaments, but we learned the hard way. And that was I remember back to those times, and I'm so grateful because we had to put on shows where we had to hustle, where we had to fund it via sponsors or tickets, or where we had to get fighters that were affordable and come up with concepts that weren't traditional just to get by. So yeah, it was a crazy introduction, but it was a good few years of doing that.
It's much like when a boxer builds a fan base, I suppose, in the small hall circuit. It's very similar to what you did, and obviously paid off. Now, around that time, we had a text exchange, which you've reminded me of several times since, where I responded with an Only Fools and Horses reference. Do you just want to tell people exactly what that was?
What did I say? I used to say, I would message you, I can't remember, I would tell you that we were going to go somewhere, and I think, yeah, you gave me the classic, that classic line, this time next year we'll be millionaires or something. And look, I always remind you of it because I think the same guys I worked with at the start, and you'll know some of them, still work with me now. And we people used to laugh at us, and probably still do, but we knew how passionate we were. We really knew our subject. We worked extremely hard on understanding how we could grow as a promotional company. And yeah, we always had that belief, and yeah, it's crazy looking back, because you don't look back often. This is just so relentless. This job, especially trying to come into a market where no one wants you to be or succeed, is difficult. But yeah, looking back and to look how far we've come since then is pretty amazing.
Do you think dealing with the media to such a degree, because in boxing you're so accessible, such scrutiny, do you think that's been the biggest learning curve so far?
100%, because you can't prepare for that. Everything else you can prepare for, because you know what's coming. And so you can build your team, you can build your infrastructure. I think our events team is one of the best in the UK. It's incredible, the events that they put on, and the scale of them, from the stadium shows to the box office shows, right down to the tournaments. But you can't prepare for someone sticking a camera in your face. And that was, especially as a young guy, I think I was 27 by the 26, 27. But it's not like being a fighter, you know, you're expected to do a lot more than that. And it still is a new thing for me, a new sort of phenomenon, and something that I had to grow into. But I had to learn on the job as well, because ultimately, when you're doing the small hall shows and you're doing the tournaments that people aren't really interested in, no one wants to know what you have to say. So yeah, it's something that I've had to learn on the job.
And we've both been victims of what you might call online stings. Some very different areas of life, though. With you were at a fight week press conference, and you were caught, if you like, or filmed on camera without your knowledge, talking about certain subjects you didn't want to address in the interview that was to come. And however that came out, it's never been proven beyond doubt how that got out. And you got a lot of sympathy from it, to be fair. What did you make of it? And I suppose first, let's start at the start. Why did you feel the need initially to have certain subjects that were off limits?
You know what? It was something that the broadcaster didn't want us to get involved in, and I don't want to get involved in. And it was more to try and stop the constant back and forth, because we felt as soon as we did our first few shows and we got a bit of momentum, the onslaught started from certain promoters and this and that. And so I think it was Riyadpur fight, and I just wanted to talk about Riyadpur. And to be honest, it was actually, I think it came from a certain member who just never asked about boxing. And yeah, as I say, I was learning on the job. Probably didn't have the biggest PR team in the world, and was told don't talk about certain subjects. And so I thought, right, we'll stay away from those. I was there to talk about Richard Riyadpur, but those are the things, and we've had a few, if I'm honest, because the level of scrutiny and the level of attention is something that we've not had before. And it just means that, you know, you have those moments, and you need those moments to sort of learn from. No one's your friend. No one cares other than yourself and your team, and everyone has an agenda, and it's difficult that. And sometimes if you're a trusting person, or perhaps see the best in people, which I do naively from time to time, you know, those situations sort of can catch up with you. And yeah, it's a minor, but those things I think are character building and allow you to learn, especially in that sort of environment.
I mean, when the thing about me hit social media, I can laugh at it now, and also because you didn't know about it and I had to explain it to you in painful detail not too long ago. I felt betrayed, I felt humiliated. I blame myself, and I still do, but you can't take away that kind of sinking feeling when you realise everyone's talking about you, and it was without your knowledge, same as with you. How did you feel when you saw that go viral online, and you know you'd been exposed, but it wasn't you didn't even realise you were being filmed?
Look, to be honest, at the start, I think things did affect me like that, but I think you then realise that this is the nature of the game. It doesn't matter how much you do, how good your show is, how bad your show is, whatever, is you're under that level of, especially in boxing, especially like I think we sometimes think it's bigger than it is. It's very much an echo chamber. It is like a very small group of people, but yeah, I think you have to laugh it off. You have to know it's pantomime, and I think that's what's helped me is realizing how fickle it is, how it changes every day, and it is just a pantomime. But yeah, at the start, probably you're similar to you when it happens for the first time. and at that level is difficult. And I think that's just something you get used to be honest.
Now, you went on a great little run after the deal with Sky. You had the Calm Brook pay-per-view success, Chris Eubank Jr., of course, and then building the prospects simultaneously. Did you kind of feel at that point, I've cracked it now, I'm at the top of the business?
No, I think at the start was, let's prove that we can put on the big shows. Like, people don't realise how far we've come. We were told we can't do pay-per-view shows. We don't know how to put on a box office show. We wouldn't know how to promote one. We wouldn't be able to do an arena show, stadium, whatever it was. We wouldn't be able to sign certain fighters, this and that. And so it was more, we felt like we had to show what we could do. And so at the start, maybe less about building the stable and more, here's a box office show, here's a big arena show, here's a sold out show, here's shows back to back. We felt like we had to tick a lot of boxes, and to ourselves as well. And it was an unbelievable start. Again, I don't really remember too much about it. Like, can you imagine 6 months before, I've been planning for 18 months in terms of how we were going to deliver for Sky and things like that, and make sure that we got the contracts. We turned down a few TV contracts before the Sky one because we were desperate for the right one for us. And then 6 months later, I've got Eubank Williams February the 5th, Calm Brook February the 19th, and Taylor Captrell February 26th. It was just relentless, and our company was just, at the time, maybe only 10 or 12 people, just gone into absolute overdrive, and we managed to sign the big fights, and it got us off to the start. And I credit that time for why we've been able to build the stable now, because we couldn't sign fighters at the start. There wasn't that trust. It's a very short career, and I don't blame boxers for it. You have to be sure, and you put your trust in someone's hands, and anything can happen but once you get into that ring. So it is I credit that for the stable that we've been able to sign.
Your predecessor as Sky's promotional partner was, of course, Eddie Hearn. And there's a narrative partly fueled by him, but also some legitimacy to it, that Matchroom have helped rejuvenate boxing in this country and take it to a different level. Did you feel the pressure of that, the shadow of that, when you joined Sky as the new partner?
Not really, because I don't really feel that. I mean, people probably expect me to, but I don't really feel that pressure, in the sense, this is such a joy and such an opportunity. I mean, as you know, what sort of shows we were having to put on prior to this. This is the pressure. Then is being able to pay your bills and being able to pay certain staff members. That's real pressure. That's real hard work. Being able to prove yourself on the biggest possible stage at such a young age, in my 20s, with working with fighters that were heroes of mine. I don't take it too seriously. This is an absolute dream. Of course, there's pressures in terms of, because you're operating at the top level, and especially being so young. And a lot of people say I'm too nice a guy to be in this, or I'm too this or naive and this. But I think you can't, and trying to stick to what you are and being that, those are challenges, I think, that everyone faces in their life at some point. But I think, to go back to the Matchroom point, I think they did an unbelievable job, and I was a fan. It was a monopoly, though. There wasn't. It was in terms of, it was the first time Sky had gone with one promoter, which I think was a good move for Sky at the time. And Frank had gone to Box Nation, and things didn't quite work out. And at the time, there was no real competition in the market, and they 100% did. Sky Sports, I credit this with them as well, and that's why I think they're the most unbelievable partner for boxing. They've been there consistently, year after year, for a long time. And now we're in a completely different environment where, we've got the Sky contract, but we're competing with the largest ever volume and budget that we've ever seen in British boxing on one broadcaster. And then also Frank, who's doing extremely well with Queensberry on BT. It's a totally different game now. It's amazing for the sport. It's if even as a fan, if I'd have thought 10 years ago that there'd be this many shows in the UK, this much opportunity for fighters, I wouldn't have believed it. So I think, yes, there's competition, but it just shows that sport is thriving.
You say you don't feel the pressure, but you're still wary with the press. I think it's fair to say there's a sense that there are other promotional entities out to bring you guys down. That sort of feeling about your rivals, the competition, does that help you? Because sometimes it seems to rattle you a bit, but then on the flip side, is it what drives you?
Look, you're right in that sense. Like, it's just not what maybe it was naive to think Well, we've not done anything. We're not going to do anything wrong, so we're not going to get involved in that. So it's not going to be like that. But yeah, it's been, because probably it's been such a period of dominance in the US as well. It's been Aaron and Heyman, but in the UK it's been Warren and him for so long. It's been like it's crazy to see, someone be so what's the word, like so obstinate and so unbelievably aggressive in the way they go about their business, and I almost wear it as a badge of honor. Whilst for me, boxing would be in a lot better place if we didn't go down that route. I truly believe that. I think most fans believe that as well. I appreciate it does numbers on YouTube and things like that, and that's why it's all part of the same game. When all the YouTubers are there and they just want me to talk about another promoter, or and they're desperate, and I'll do a 9-minute interview, and if I've said one thing because they've asked me 14 times, and maybe on the last one I say something, and then suddenly it's a headline and it's Ben Shalom's as bad as them and he said this, what a joker, and so that's where I've been wary, because that's just not what I believe in. It's not what I enjoy doing. That's not my character. And so I've been put in a situation that isn't comfortable for me, because it's just not what I enjoy doing. It's not what helps my business. It doesn't help my fighters. It doesn't help the shows that we're putting on. And so it's that you're probably right. That has been the most challenging part, because it's just something we're not interested in.
And talking of uncomfortable situations, when you came into Sky, the head of boxing commercial development was Adam Smith. Reliable figure, always around on fight weeks, very good on the business side. Had a great relationship with Eddie, seemed to love the early parts of the relationship with you, spoke to you every day, he was saying, really enthused by your youth and energy and ideas. And then not long into the job for you, Adam is taken ill and has to take a sabbatical, which is still ongoing. Our thoughts go out to him. I'm not going to say too much because it's not my place. But he isn't well at the moment, I think it's fair to say. And you're then in the deep end without that support, that person who's been at Sky for longer than everyone else and really knows the job. Has that been tough to kind of manage without him?
To be honest, it's the media where Adam is great with, and I think he was so fun to work with. I do think one day we may see him back, and as my thoughts go to him and his family, to be honest. And he is a great guy and unbelievable for British boxing way before my time. He was working for Sky before I was born. So yeah, obviously a big miss in the media, and a big miss just in general. Larger than life character, and very, very smart, knows the business inside out. But look, I mean, sometimes I sit there on a fight night and I do miss him, because he was just a good guy, and he had Sky Sports Boxing, but also British boxing's interest at heart. And but we have an amazing team, and John Wishusen, who was head of boxing at Matchroom for a long time, is our head of boxing, and we have a very experienced team in matchmaking and around broadcast and events and things like that. So very experienced team. But of course Adam Smith was great for me. And I'm really helpful, especially in those early parts, and hopefully he'll be back. But not just that, he's a unbelievable commentator, and I think you miss that voice on those big events.
What do you think are the most common misconceptions about you among boxing fans?
I've heard so many. I think I've heard the Illuminati stuff. I've heard the Jewish conspiracy stuff, which is crazy if you know my background. I've heard the rich kid that was given everything stuff. I've heard so many. There's so many but I don't blame people in a way, because boxing it's been the same promoters for so long that. And especially at 27 years old, I got my license when I was 22, 23. I got my first big TV deal at 27. It's young. People are going to assume something's not right, or something's been done, or something has been manoeuvred. Obviously the MTK Dubai stuff, and there's just so many ridiculous sort of misconceptions about myself, and the reality is I'm just a guy that works his fucking nuts off every single day, that loves what he does, that has prepared so much for this moment. And people might say, he's naive, look at what this happened, but look at what in reality has happened. Look at the shows, look at the fighters, look at the in especially from a complete standing start to even get anyone to even be able to put a dent in what we're doing. I think sometimes people can't accept that hard work and having a good team and being so dedicated to what you do can create amazing things and deliver amazing results. And yes, I'm still learning, and yes, there's things that I don't know, and yes, I'm not as experienced as other promoters, but I have an amazing team and a really experienced team. I think the difficulty with what we're in is, if something goes wrong with our company, even if it's an injury, it's down to Ben Shalom's inexperience, or if and that's because of my age. That's always going to be leveled, even if the people in my business are the most experienced, most knowledgeable people within the sport, and actually it's coming from their department, it's still down to Ben Shalom's inexperience. And but when we do well, it's this or that, I don't know. But as I say, I learned very early on there's a pantomime, and we want to be here for the long term, and that's what we work towards every day. So those are the few I've seen.
You mentioned MTK there. Just to touch on that briefly, we interviewed Amir Abdullah earlier this week, and he talked about his previous relationship with Daniel Kinahan, and he said everyone in boxing at some point or another has worked with Daniel Kinahan, but since the sanctions came in, everyone's kind of backed away. Is that your experience also? That's the case?
Look, I think it was mainly before our time, especially at the big level, and I don't want this to become a clickbait title, and that's why I've avoided it. But I'd probably say with the one guys in the sport that never went down that road, and I agree there's probably no one else. But I don't want to throw people on the bus. It seems to be a thing that's being slowly getting better in boxing, and I feel I've been in a compromised position talking on that subject, to be honest, so much of the time. But yeah, it's not good. And I think people that know us in the industry and know what we stand for, know the values that we have, know what we believe the sport should be and where it needs to go. And you don't need to read too much into that to see how perhaps we're differentiated from previous. But the sport is a traditional sport, but there's always room for change. Everything has to get better. Every industry, every sport has to change and get better. And boxing's growing, but I think it has room to change as well.
We've talked about the myriad challenges and the impact upon you, and I'm sure an impact on your mental health at times as well. What is it that keeps you going? Why do you stay in boxing when you could probably earn a decent living in a less stressful environment?
It goes back to just, I promise you, it was a lot more stressful when you're starting a business and you've got anything like this. I'm built for this. I don't feel like I feel like I'm built to be in a stressful environment. I almost enjoyed the chaos of it. I don't think I'd be suited to a normal 9 to 5 and a more comfortable experience. But I love the sport as well, and there's no better feeling than working with fighters day in, day out, that have a lot more worries than you, that have a lot more scrutiny than you, that have to go and fight at the end of it, that never know when their next opportunity is coming, that have to train and relentlessly, and they're one loss away from their career ending. Like, that gives you energy, and that makes you realise how sort of lucky you are. But no, I feel like I'm one of the most fortunate people in this country. I've managed to, in my 20s, as I say, get to a position like this in the sport that I love through only dedication, and get to work with people I love. So yes, it comes with a huge amount of crap as well, and shit that you have to deal with that is just it's just unbelievable. But again, a lot of it is there's an agenda behind it. A lot of it is sparked by promoters or different people that don't want you to do well, and if you're going to listen to them, and if you're going to let that get on top of you and distract you from what you're trying to do, which is the whole goal of it, and that's what the intention is, then you've got no chance.
Bring it right back almost to the start. This time next year, Rodney, I mean, it's been a few years actually. Are you a millionaire yet?
Don't ask me about money. Look, I think we're doing very well. We've got a very successful business. But for me, and as much as it might sound crazy, yes, money is a great byproduct of what we do. Everyone wants to earn for what they do. But we are just at the start. And really, people don't... You can only see what you can see, and you can only see the shows that we put on and what we've done up to date. But we're set up for the long term. We're here. We have an unbelievable, as I say, team that have been together for a long time, and we have a massive vision for the sport. That's our goal. It's not about how much money can I squeeze out the next 6 months. It is we invest everything that we make. At this point, we've generated and turned into a very big business now, and that's the focus, is to keep growing, is to keep getting better people, keep getting better fighters, delivering for our fighters, delivering for fans, and finding a way to grow. And so yeah, that's really what the day to day is.
So maybe a millionaire. We're not denying or confirming.
No.
Brilliant, Ben. Really appreciate it, mate. It's been great.